Welcome to More by Naviam, a Maximo podcast. I'm Stephen Shull, your host and a principal Maximo solution engineer here at Naviam. This is going to be your space for giving practical insights, success stories, and an expert perspective on how to maximize your IBM Maximo software solution. We're going to be covering some of the 9.2 features. Phil, you want to give a quick introduction?
Yeah, Phil Runion. I'm the Naviam Maximo Service Technical Product Manager. Been working at Naviam or Naviam companies for over a decade and in Maximo the whole time. Started as a developer. Now I help lead where we're taking our cloud-hosted product and how we roll out things. Also a little bit of a movie and a rocket buff. That's the background.
Very nice.
Happy to be here today.
Yeah. So it's going to be a little bit different. For those that are really familiar with the IBM roadmap sessions, it's a lot of great content in a very short time window. We're not going to try to cover every feature, but what we want to do is kind of talk about some of the less covered features, as well as kind of give a little background on why that is important, right? Instead of like a blurb on a roadmap slide, we really kind of want to dive in a little bit and provide some context as to why it's important and why you should kind of care about it. To kind of start with, for those that aren't aware, we do want to just do a quick introduction on the release cadence stuff. So if you're not familiar, the Maximo Application Suite releases a new version every year. So roughly in the June timeframe, could slip a little bit to July, etc. But roughly in that June timeframe. So we're about to come out with 9.2, and roughly June 2027, 9.3 will come out. So it's continuously enhancing, and all of the different products that make up the application suite are getting enhancements there. The other really kind of cool, important thing to kind of note is the stuff that gets into the ideas portal is heavily prioritized for each of these releases. So if you submit good ideas, get support from the community behind it, you'll get some features implemented. We actually have a couple that we're going to talk about today that were features that we've requested that we think are going to be very well received by the community. So with that, I'm going to probably actually just start with the ideas roadmap slide.
Yeah, I think one of those ideas that I've seen that I heard one of the product managers say it was too many votes to ignore is dark mode.
I know. Unfortunately, it's
Just
going to be a 9.3, but I can't wait for it. I'm a huge dark mode fan, so for me, anything that can be put into dark mode is in dark mode. And logging into Maximo, especially if it's a middle of the night incident or something, and I'm trying to troubleshoot something, it is rough. So
yeah, I find myself bridging. I'm like 50-50. So we'll see where I turn it on and where I don't. Working in so many Maximo instances too, it's like, I don't know, if everybody's on light mode, can I really turn mine to dark mode? You know, in one system, but not the 10 others.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm kind of interested to see too how the CSS customization that came out in, was it 9.091, and I started coloring instances, coloring your non-prods. I don't know how that's going to work with dark mode. If I'm going to have like use this color on light mode and this color on dark mode, but
that's true. Yeah, you're theming.
A challenge that's coming up.
Yeah. So I pulled up just one of the slides from Lisa's roadmap presentation that I think is really good. It's a lot of the ideas that people submitted around Manage that's making it into 9.2. Again, we're not going to try to cover all of these. There's a lot of stuff here. But there are a couple that I really wanted to call out. And one of the biggest ones for me, I recorded this idea years ago, but it was kind of always a big pain point, and that is queuing SMTP emails when the SMTP server is unavailable. So for those that don't know what Naviam does, one of our businesses is to offer Maximo as a SaaS solution, right? So as part of that, email delivery is very critical. And historically, if email fails to send for whatever reason, the public cloud is down or whatever, that email is just gone forever. So what we've done is we've created like local relays to try to ensure high availability even when cloud systems are unavailable. But it's always been kind of a pain point for us. Even that still has its own challenges. So being able to
Yeah, I
actually
mean,
queue those emails is a huge win for even customers that are not in a cloud solution, right? If you're sending through Office 365 or SendGrid, it's kind of a very nice feature to have.
yeah, I think that'll be really great. We have historically run 3 servers in every data center just to handle basically queuing and archiving, logging, that sort of thing. Um, and you add that up across a couple of data centers, it's quite a bit of effort. Um, we've looked at using Amazon's SES mail delivery service, and I really think the queuing SMTP in the Maximo instance will complement that move for us. Because even if we lose connectivity for a period of time, we're not going to lose all those emails. And it sounds so silly. We get so many support requests if emails aren't delivered or they even get stuck in spam.
Yep.
Um, it's a critical component that's often overlooked, and nobody cares about it until it breaks.
Yeah.
So this will be a huge enhancement, uh, and hopefully nobody ever notices it because it just works.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one that I want to highlight, talking about ideas that have been widely requested for a long period of time, and that is the ability to prevent an asset populating when a location is specified. So way back, probably version 5 of Maxima, at least definitely by version 6, if you have a location that has one and only one asset, and you reference it on a work order as an example, it's going to populate that asset on the work order automatically. And there have been tech notes and hacks that people have tried to do to prevent this. It's never been able to be fully perfect. The automation script tech note would lead to certain issues where you legitimately would set the asset and then that sets the location and then it clears out your asset and stuff like that. So um, it was never a perfect system, but being able to actually control this as a organizational setting, I think, is another huge win. For some customers, they're going to want that behavior, but most of the customers we interact with hate it and want to disable it. So I'm really happy that's another thing that you can kind of control.
Another one I think will be interesting for kind of the medium to large size mobile customers is diverting the mobile traffic.
Yeah.
Um, the more you split out workloads, I think the easier it becomes to troubleshoot, prioritize. Right now, we're always routing that to the UI worker nodes and kind of mixing what's mobile traffic and what's not. IBM keeps adding more and more to mobile. The thing's getting bigger and bigger, and I think isolating that out uh, should be a nice little win, especially if you've got more and more people transitioning to mobile and out of the Maximo UI.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Stephen, I don't know, does that also move any of the UI apps like the newer, what is it, Graphite apps? Those will still all go to the UI, right? Because it's in the web.
Correct. Provided that you hit the UI, those will still go to the UI. What happened is has always been the setting for the mobile app where you could say use server bundle X, but then when it actually came to making the request, mobile would just always hit the primary, which was typically the UI. For people that use the desktop, if you deploy like an all bundle for MIF and you need to, for some reason, use the MIF role based application, you'd totally be able to do that still. So this is purely going to impact mobile. There's actually some really cool stuff on mobile that we'll probably talk about later that didn't make this list, especially things around like setup and stuff like that, or administration tasks that I think would be really cool. But definitely from an administrator perspective, if you have a lot of mobile users and you're trying to route that traffic, it'd be a great way to help scale your Maximo system. The last one that on this list that I kind of want to talk about before we jump over to some of the new MAS core features and stuff like that is the work order description. Uh, I've never really understood this too well, but from a Maximo perspective, by default, if your PM has a description, that's what gets copied down to the work orders that it generates, even though the job plan also has a description. if the PM didn't have a description and you wanted the job plan description, if you leave the PM description null, it will use the job plan description. But we always encountered some customers that really wanted the job plan description to always be on the work order. They didn't care that it was triggered from a PM. They just always wanted that. So again, this was another one that you could kind of build your own automation to handle. But now out of the box, it's a setting in organizations. If you want it, you can say, hey, use the job plan description. And as long as the job plan description is set, it'll take precedence even over the PM. So again, that flexibility for your business requirements is always a good thing to have.
And that'll be an org setting, not like PM by PM.
Yeah, so that one will be an org setting. There is some other features that they made around, like if you have a PM that generates and you want it to run at the end of the month, right? So obviously all the months are different, a number of days. February is 28 or 29. And there's always been a system property that you could turn on, and it will try to change globally all the PMs to kind of align to that last day of the month, whether it be the 30th, 31st, or the 28th, or whatever. But in 9.2, one of the features that they're adding is the ability to, at an organizational level instead of a global level, and at a PM level, be able to actually control that. So if you want that PM to generate on the last day of the month, you can set that flag and it will actually calculate the last day of the month. So that's really good.
Date and time. I feel like every time I write automation, it trips me up, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a last day of the month and not all the months have 30 days, or time zones, I feel like are always tripping me up. Anytime I have to deal with a date time, I get annoyed writing an automation script. So happy to hear they're doing more.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of things that they added in 9.2 that actually got backported that I wanted to talk about too. They don't always do this. Generally speaking, ideas only get put into new versions for good reason, right? And feature enhancements can have negative consequences. We don't want to negatively impact people. But there were a couple of things that, to me, especially again, kind of as a cloud provider, that were really kind of important. So one of them is SMTP OAuth. Historically, SMTP has always been authenticated with basic credentials, so username and password. All of the big email servers, whether it be Google or Office 365, they've started to sunset support for that. And so this has always been a big challenge, right? The Office 365 has delayed it at least 4 or 5 times because it's so hard to get everyone's software onto a version that can support it. But now Maximo on 9.2, 9.1, 9.0, etc., if you go to newer fix packs, will actually have the ability to send and authenticate with OAuth. So again, because it's such a critical feature, that was something they actually backported into the earlier versions as well. I'm not sure if you have anything you wanted to add on that.
No, I'm just kind of surprised it's taken this long.
Yeah.
I remember it was probably, 3-4 years ago, the email listener, we were using it against Office 365.
Yeah.
And we had to convert everything to OAuth. We had to write a little bit of custom automation to just manage it in general. I was surprised to see this one on the list, just because I kind of assumed it was always there and we just weren't using it yet, because we were using the local SMTP configs to get around the queuing issue, right? So happy to see this is being put in there. It'll be really interesting to see how easy the first round of that is to manage. And I'm assuming it's a core setting, because you have both SMTP and Manage and at core. And I know Manage picks up the core setting, and that's where we default at this point. So it would have to be, I think.
Yeah, so it's in both places, unfortunately. So like on the Manage side, in the endpoints application, you'll configure the OAuth client like you could for any other integration. And then there's a system property where you'll specify which OAuth client to use. So you'll still have it at the Manage level. They also added it to the suite level. I have it configured at the suite level, But because the manage uses endpoints, I'm confident they did something different for the MAS core level. So it'd be good to talk about.
It'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time. I feel like if we go back into the eights of MAS, core and manage were very, very separate, and it feels like every version they get closer and closer and closer to just being one product. We saw that with like users and security
Yeah.
in 9.1 bumping up. I think it's on your list where
Yeah.
Mongo is getting phased out even more. But hearing that they are using an endpoint in manage, but then you can also configure it in the suite, just feels off. And I kind of wonder if we look at 9.3, 9.4, if that gets changed again, just kind of bringing those two products closer and closer and making core really Maximo. And that, I guess, matches the name, the Maximo Application Suite.
Yeah. Yeah, you're getting a little ahead of me on the user thing. I do want to talk about that, but I'm going to skip it for now. The other thing, another thing they backported was something we requested a long time ago as well, which is the ability to control the send from on scheduled reports. Historically, it's always sent as the user that scheduled the report. We built a whole series of automation to control that. So basically, somebody schedules a report, we execute it as max admin so we can control the send from address. Then from there, we have a whole series of automation to ensure that private QBRs can still be run by the person that created the report without giving access to other people. And it was just a whole series of configuration related items that we had to do to make reports work while at the same time controlling that send from. And now it's just a simple system property. You set it and it's going to use that for everybody, which is honestly where it should have always been. All the cron tasks you control through system property emails. Not having that for scheduled reports has always been a problem because for us as a cloud provider, generally speaking, we don't have the authorization to send as somebody. So again, we had to build a lot to prevent that.
I've deployed that automation many times and answered a lot of questions too. What is this QBR security group that we use to do that?
Yeah.
Happy to see it there, and hopefully it keeps more emails out of the spam filter in people's outlooks, which is the whole reason you really need it.
Yep.
Didn't realize this was an SMTP podcast, but a lot of SMTP built into this 9.2 release.
That's true. Yeah. It's one of those things that doesn't get as much love because it's a platform thing, right? At the roadmaps, they love to talk about mobile changes or AI service or asset investment planning. They're all really cool stuff. But I don't know, the things that get me excited are more of the platform level things that make our lives a little bit easier. And I think that's a good segue.
Nobody cares about them.
I think that's a good segue into user management. So you kind of started the topic a little bit with how in 9.1 a lot more of the user management goes into manage. And I think it's really important for people to understand that because in 9.2, the Mongo version of the user record goes away entirely. And it seems small on paper until you tried to actually manage and support it, right? So in 9.0, one of the big challenges was 9.0 supported more than one authentication mechanism for a user. So you could have a local user that also has LDAP and has SAML. Like they could have all three authentication mechanisms for that one user account. And when we did these backflow scenarios, so we take a customer's production system, we restore it to dev or train to dev or whatever it might be. We always had this mismatch of user data where we had some user data in Mongo, we had some data in Manage, and getting them in sync again has always been kind of a challenge. In earlier versions, you only had one identity provider. It was a little bit easier. It still kind of sucked. You had to try to control which identity provider, whether it be SAML, local, LDAP, a user should be set as, send that data over into Mongo. But 9.0 became really tricky because now we don't have access to that user credential. And so if we synchronize users, then it creates all those users in that lower environment. But now they're getting all these emails from the slower environment, which you may or may not want, or
Back
you
to
don't know
that
what their password
SMTP.
is. So then they don't have
Yep.
access to log in. They now have a user record,
Yep.
but they don't know what their password is. So now you got to go reset their password. It was a real pain. 9.1 made it slightly better. So now Manage actually knows all of your identity providers, but that user synchronization thing still had to occur, right?
Yep.
Every time we refresh, we have to push all the new users that are only creating production systems into Mongo.
I think users was the thing I fought the most in all the 9.0 to 9.1 upgrades.
Yeah.
Just getting Manage to sync to Core so Core could sync to Manage, and the cleanup that triggered between the two, especially in the non-prods, especially when trying to rerun upgrades. Always out of sync.
Yeah, and you also run into weird situations too, right? So in 9.1, if you change a user record, change their title as an example, it'll synchronize to Mongo, no problem. But if you go into the people application and you change the title, well, that won't synchronize to Mongo. And then when Mongo pushes back for whatever reason,
They're fighting over that field.
now they overwrite each other, and so now you have this weird mismatch, and it's hard to explain to people that aren't aware what's going on. Like, hey, if you're going to change this type of field, you have to do it over in the users app rather than the people app. But now that all just goes away. We have one concept of a user. If you do a prod to dev refresh, that credential comes down with it, just like it used to in 7.6. It just makes that user experience a lot easier for you to get in.
Yeah, I think the other thing that excites me about not having a Mongo user record is I can bulk update in the managed database, just like everything else, whether it's using the REST API, any sort of integrations, backend updates may happen from time to time too. I think being able to just hit that same database is something I was missing from 7.6.
100%.
And it was always like, how do I do some bulk updates and not cause massive problems?
Yeah, and that was definitely true. Over time, they added things like a file import to MazCore, right? But the problem with the file import was you had to provide everything, and you couldn't export. So, like, if you didn't provide someone's name as an example, and you imported it, you would nullify their name. So even though they had that method, it was nowhere near the flexibility that Manage has. Manage, you provide what you want to change, along with obviously the identifier like user ID, and then you're off and running.
I never used the import in Maz because it was just such a challenge. It was always, let me find another way to do this, whether it was sync manage up after making the changes there, or hey, it's only 25 users, I can spend 30 minutes and just update them all. I think 9.1 added the export, if I remember right.
Correct.
But by then I had already like changed my approaches that it was almost a lost cause, and I guess now it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, and that was one of the reasons why, because 9.1, the way that they're able to do the user export is because it's all tied into Manage again, right? So it's a new, pretty role-based application. So a lot of good stuff there. But behind the scenes, the plumbing is all Manage, and Manage has the ability to export data to CSV really easy from the REST API. That's what they take advantage of. All right. Another thing that I'm kind of excited about too, and kind of relates to user management, but it's a little bit different, is they added the ability historically to configure a lot of the communications that MazCore sent, but they did it through YAML. And for those that aren't aware, YAML you modify inside of OpenShift. We don't provide OpenShift access to customers, partners, etc., for obvious reasons.
We don't even let our frontline support have the access. It's like L3.
Yeah. And so from our perspective, like, yes, you had the ability to control it, but you really didn't have the ability to control it. And you were limited in certain substitution variables, stuff like that. By them moving user management all into Manage, now everything's triggered from communication templates. So the way that you send emails today in Manage, with all the flexibility of substitution variables, etc., that's all there. Who you get to send the email to, If you don't want it to send a particular email, you just change the communication template status to inactive, and it won't send that communication. It's really simplifying the administration experience, enabling the actual customer administrator to control it without necessarily having to go to a completely different team. Because even in large organizations, who has access to OpenShift is typically a very small, narrow window of people compared to people that may be an administrator in a Maximo system. So providing that flexibility in communication templates is great.
I think it's a touch crazy. You and me both get excited about these back end things that are like, or Maz is just going to be like 7.6 or 7.5 again. Take me back to COM templates, revert that, revert this. I feel like there's a trend there, and I don't know if that makes us old or it's just the framework was there, the framework worked. If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah, I think it's again all about that flexibility, right? Manage is probably one of the most configurable systems in the world. You can add new attributes, you can add new indexes, create new apps, do all this from the front end of Maximo. And I think you start to lose that power when you start moving stuff out into these other products that don't have the decades of experience building this stuff out. And so it's a win.
Yeah, I'll be curious. I'm starting to look at the Tririga, the MREF Maximo for real estate and facilities. And I don't know how much of the framework that Manage has was in those products. But as they bring that into the suite, I feel like they're really going to hopefully have their eyes open to how great Maximo is. I think with the foundation, is that what it's called? Essentials, I forget the name.
Foundation. Yep.
Still having to have kind of that framework of Maximo, even if you don't deploy Manage, I think will unlock some interesting possibilities for some of these other products. MREF's the obvious one for me because it's a legacy product you're upgrading into.
Mm-hmm.
But even be able to use those with all of the applications in the suite, bringing the niceness, the goodness of Maximo, whether it's COM templates or COM templates that trigger automation scripts, that trigger APIs, chain it all together and make magic happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the security model is super granular. You can easily create and add new permissions. Can control stuff at sites, GLs, etc. Yeah, it's really flexible and battle tested. It's been used heavily, so that was another advantage to Manage taking over, is really more granular role-based app access for things like Monitor, which had some security controls, but not nearly the level that it has now, which is good.
Yeah, and I think because we are talking about 9.2 here, those apps, the core apps that are really the Manage apps, the new UI, are getting more tabs from the classic Maximo screens. Really what we saw in the user app is just getting moved into those new applications. More tabs across the top, more to do there. And then app point calculations, all that fun stuff is getting enhanced with every version too. How long do you think it will be before they drop the Manage user and the Manage security? You think that'll be a 9.3? I know it's not 9.2.
Yeah, it's definitely not 9.2 yet. But as you mentioned, they're continuing to enhance it, right? So site access, object structure security, that type of stuff. That's moving in 9.2. There's just been a lot of different features that they've had over time. But truthfully, the role-based experience, provided you don't have something that you need that is not part of it, it is a much better user experience than the classic applications. Like one of my favorite things in the world is the ability to control which columns are displayed in a role-based application. So customers have always requested, I want to configure a list view that is different for this person from this person, right? Or in the case that I'm looking at a specific type of update, right? I want to see these fields for PM work orders. So this query for PM work orders should show me this information. But now I'm going to an emergency work order. I want to see this other set of information. And it was always very difficult to do. And there have been some third-party solutions that have tried to handle it a little bit, but conditional UI in the classic apps was very problematic.
Yeah.
And just being able to get that flexibility is fantastic. So I would not be shocked if it stays around for a while, just to continue to support customers that have added their own fields. It may not be comfortable with doing the math-based application access. Um,
Hmm.
but I would expect over time that that would start to go away.
So do you think 9.2 will be the release where people should start to look at, hey, I want to get out of work order tracking, move maybe a little closer to the out of the box, use the role base, add the 5 fields that I really need? Like, is now the time?
Work order is a little bit trickier because there's a lot of customers with industry solutions like HSE, etc. The work order role
Mhm.
based app is good if you aren't taking advantage of a lot of those things. They continue to enhance it. In 9.2, you get some really critical things like the ability to add attachments. You technically could have configured it, but it wasn't there out of the box. That's kind of an
Right.
important thing for people to have. Um, so they continue to narrow the gap. I think work order is a little bit tricky. I think on the user front, the user security groups in particular, like those would be ones that'd
Yep.
be a lot easier if you like to move in because your
Right. How
changes,
many fields do people add to users?
right? And I think that's going to be where people are going to really start to experience the role based apps. That and operational dashboard. I think 9.2 continues to whittle away at the differences between a start center and what you can do in an operational dashboard. Um,
Yep.
and
I
I
agree.
think that becomes more and more compelling. There's a lot of features in operational dashboard already, like the ability to embed an iframe. So, like if you have a really great Power BI report, right?
Right. You can just put it right there.
You just put it right there, let people see it in context. I love the idea of work queues. It's result sets, but significantly more powerful, right? So you can take action from the list tab and say, hey, I need to approve these work orders, or hey, I need to cancel these work orders, or
I think it's interesting you get excited about that because I look at that and I'm like, ooh, do I actually even want to enable that? I mean, how many pieces of data do I have to put on a dashboard for a technician to actually take action on a piece of work? I think when we start to talk about managers and we go up the hierarchy of management, maybe it makes sense then, right? Hey, I forgot to approve these 10 work orders, but they really need to get done. I remember those based on the description, or there's maybe the right use case,
yeah, I mean, another one to think of
but
is like if you have a queue, right? So like for us, we do service requests in Maximo, right? And generally speaking, stuff gets routed to a queue and then people take
yeah,
from the queue, right? So that'd be another good example. Today you have to open the
yeah,
record and then go and take ownership. You'll be able to just click and say, I'm going to take ownership of this work order, this SR, etc. I think that's another kind of good use case of, and again, it's not that you're saving a ton of time on each one, but it's something you do dozens of times throughout the day.
yeah. It's interesting you pulled out take ownership as your example. I heard that in one of the presentations from IBM. That is the example they're shipping as you can write your own custom actions. It's like, here's a thing you've always been able to do from like the list tab or whatever, but it's also the framework. If you want to add a custom action that calls an automation script or whatever, they're shipping take ownership as the example. I don't know if you've seen that
Was it take
or not
ownership
yet.
or a select owner? I think it was select owner where you'd actually need to provide
I
a
think it was
person.
select
Yeah,
owner, and
yeah.
I'm
And so, but I
I'm
mean, because when you select,
oversimplifying.
yeah, when you select an owner, you have to pick who that person is, and that was something you
Yeah, you
couldn't do
pop up the
before.
dialogue
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the 2 tabs. No, it's a great example. I think tons of people are going to get use out of that if they start to trust those actions, if they really want to let people take action from their operational dashboards. So happy to see it. Um, happy to get those operational dashboards added more and more. Um, I semi recently started working with operational dashboards in 9.1, and happy to see it getting more love. I think it's still a little rough in 9.1, so I'm really hopeful for 9.2 closing some of those start center gaps.
Yeah.
One I saw that was pretty helpful. So you use the single work queue to replace a result set if you actually want to see records, right? Um, but we use a lot of, hey, let me chart that out. And that was missing. There's a lot of chart options that's getting added in 9.2. And I think that's really going to help create the redundancy or parity between the start centers and the operational dashboards and let people start to transition. And I kind of think you're right. Once you transition, there's more possibilities, there's more options, there's more streamlined workflows. And that's going to be a win for people.
Oh yeah, so yeah. Unfortunately, Start Center is gonna be one of those things that's gonna stick around for a while, just because you have so many. Getting all of them rebuilt into operational dashboards, right? There's fundamental differences between the two, so it's not as
Mm-hmm.
simple as, hey, go through all my existing Start Centers, reconfigure them in operational dashboard. But I think over time, all the new stuff you start to develop will be in operational dashboards, and then you'll slowly start trying to phase out all of your existing Start Centers. But people don't realize it until they start getting really large. But like, we have customers that have 40 something Start Center templates for a given user. That is a
Mm-hmm.
very poor user experience when you're trying to load all of those Start Centers, or you're trying to keep it updated, right? So Start Centers out of box, you're not going to get the latest version of it unless you know to go check for updates. We built automation around that to try to address that problem, but most customers don't have something around there. So I think that always live, the ability to embed external content. I think the ability to do actions. And you are right. Like, sometimes you're gonna have to go into the record anyways, because you need to see more. Like, for a work order, you need to understand what's being planned, right? What's my cost going to be before I go and I approve this work? So it's not always going to be stuff that you can do straight from the result set, but I think it's
I think the right scenario, the right person, it could be a big win.
yeah,
The management team that logs into Maximo once a month just to get a snapshot, great.
yeah,
And I think the iframe you mentioned plays into that really nicely too, whether it's Power BI or some other metric. I think you can pull in anything you want, really. Um, I saw the demo last week, and they pulled in Texas Hold'em right on your operational dashboard. And I was like, well, I don't know that I want to do that, but it's a great way to show the
yeah,
experience that you could have. The other thing I thought was interesting with operational dashboards, and it might be there in 9.1, I've only heard about it in 9.2, is being able to pull from other non-manage applications within the suite.
yeah,
So whether you're using health or you're using MVI, operational dashboards is, again, manage taking over the suite, using that framework and pull it all in. Um, I think so many people are still trying to figure out how to get from 7.6 to MAS, but things like that, when you're getting into the other applications and you can have that unified experience, makes me happy to see. Uh, Not doing it a lot yet, but I feel like that's the journey we're on.
yeah, 100%. And you'll see it with like the left hand nav, right? A lot of that came in 9.1, but in
Mm-hmm.
9.2, giving users the ability to configure their left hand nav the way that they want.
Oh yeah, the focus
Yeah,
mode.
focus mode. And so people that start getting a lot of applications, right? That left hand nav gets really busy, and you may on a day to day basis touch 3 or 4 applications, but you're seeing 45. And so I'm really bad about this personally, where I don't even try to use the go to anymore. I know where all the apps are, but it's so much faster for me just to type, I want to go to work orders, I want to go to changes, I want to go to
Oh,
assets. It's kind of I don't know if it's a problematic response, but I don't know that's really what the right encouragement is to give people access to so many apps that it
you
just
have to use a
you have
search.
to use a search every time you're trying to navigate to something else.
I do the same thing though, whether it's the favorite apps or the search. Uh, I have not gone all the way down the screen to expand like work orders to get to work order tracking.
Yeah.
I'm just going to start typing and go.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna try to share something because I kind of want to. show this off because I think this actually demos really well.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting when that does come out. I know you can turn off focus mode so nobody can use it, but like I don't know why you would. I mean, so I don't know. You have an app you always want people to be able to see.
Yeah.
Probably just more opportunity for customization and automation to, hey, I added a new app and I want all my users to have it in their focus mode. I've not seen that use case kind of played out, but it's probably just another thing where we'll have to automation script in.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna have to share my entire screen so I can access the lab. Kind of show off what focus mode is really quick, right? And what we've kind of been talking about. I in the system am max admin, so I have a ton of permissions, ton of applications. But right, like how often am I really going into record release or service address or any of these other applications, right? So as a user, what I can do is I can configure my focus mode in 9.2 and I can pick the apps that are most relevant for me in the order that I want them, right? So before all the modules were sorted in a specific order. And so if you wanted the work order application, it's always at the bottom of the list. But maybe that's where I spend my entire day and I want that to be the top of the list. Or I need to do assets, labor reporting. I really want a subset. So I pick the apps that I want. And again, I can kind of select from here which apps that I want, add them over here, save. And then when I turn on focus mode, I eliminate all of the clutter of all those go-to modules, etc. Like I just see the apps that I interact with on a daily basis. I can quickly go into them, access it. It's a fantastic thing for the customers that really want or need it. It's something they actually demoed for me way back. I think it was during the 9.0 development,
Is
where
that
this is
old?
one of the. Well, they started
The
the
idea
planning
is
for what it was gonna. Yeah. Like this was something before they came out with the new left-hand nav in 9.1 that they really wanted to get out there, and I think it's fantastic. I'm a strong proponent of it, especially for, like I said, the admin level users. If you have somebody that only has access to 2 or 3 applications, they're probably not going to see a lot of value from it. But for like your administrators, right, you can really configure it the way that you need. There's a couple of other things while I'm in here. Do you have anything you want to add on focus mode before I switch to some of the organizations?
curious. I haven't played with it yet. So if you turn on focus mode, does the search work for a non-focus mode app?
It does not. So what you see is what you got.
So it's just searching that list. Yeah, I don't know how much I'm going to use that or not. Like it looks nice. Demos nicely. I hope they push it all to the top and not have that search bar drop to the middle.
Yeah, that's true.
But I know this is a feature release, not the real thing.
Yeah, that is important to call out too. So this is a pre-release version of 9.2. It will actually be releasing in a couple weeks. So once it gets released, we'll deploy it. But yeah, it'd be a good feedback item for Jordan and team. But a couple of the other things I wanted to show while I'm in here, right? We talked about some of the new organizational settings, and I absolutely love this. So like one of the things was the preventing an asset defaulting on a location selection. And now you just go into your organizational settings and you'll be able to actually just say prevent asset population from locations. Fantastic. It is organization wide, not site level. So that is something to be aware of. But again, it's very nice to have that flexibility. The PM options we kind of talked about. If you want to use the job plan description, that is here. And this one is site level. So if you want this for a specific site, you just select the appropriate site up here. And it will apply for that specific site. So it's a fantastic addition. There's a couple of other things we talked about a little bit on the operational dashboard, but I'm actually going to log out because I want to show something that, well, let's go through this flow. So for those that aren't aware and they've tried to use Maximo Mobile, when you go through, if you aren't using an MDM could easily pre-configure the app for everybody. The actual user experience for the initial setup has always been kind of tricky. So what they've done is they've made it extremely easy, right? You want to go download the app, you follow the prompts, it'll actually allow you to do that. Go to the next page, give you a QR code, you scan that QR code, and then now it will configure your app to hit the proper system. Getting people to know which Getting people to know which URL to hit has always been tricky, right? Because people are like, "Oh, I'm in Manage, so I'm gonna use the Manage URL," and that's not what you needed in the mobile app. So being able to, like, make it really simple and streamlined. I haven't actually seen this in any of the, roadmap presentations, but this is kind of a nice quality of life, improvement.
Well, especially if you want to try out mobile. I mean, it's there. You download the app, scan the codes. That makes sense. I think it's nice they're adding it. I wrote a blog maybe 3 years ago now, maybe longer, of getting started with Maximo Mobile, and just like whether you're in 7.6 or you're in MAS, like get this app and use this URL to connect. I feel like they took my blog and built it into a little wizard there. I can't imagine they actually read my blog, but feels that way as somebody who's Googled my own blog, 20 times in the last year.
Yeah, no, that initial run improvement is great. Um, the other thing I kind of want to cover while I'm in here. This one's going to be one of those well received and hated changes, probably simultaneously, depending on who you are. Um, Maximo has always had the system property control the number of rows downloaded when you do a table download. So, like, you're on the list tab of work orders, and you hit the download to Excel button. And what happens is if you have a lot of records, Maximo initializes that MBO set for all of those records. And we've had a lot of heap dumps that have been triggered purely because somebody goes into the work order tracking application and tries to download 2+ million work orders. And it can't. It's a very large CSV file. It crashes. Um, They've changed it from being unlimited to 200 out of the box. And so the good news here is, generally speaking, I always tell customers, like, table downloads, 200's a little probably on the low conservative side. You could go higher than that, right? But you're not really designed for bulk retrieval of data. If you want to retrieve a lot of records, doing a query or actually doing a report that kind of builds the result set is significantly better than doing the MBOs for a lot of records.
So many people do it. It's there, it's convenient.
Yeah, it's a little too easy is the problem.
Any given system, I know I can go and click that button. So what would you say a good number there is? I think I agree with you. 200's conservative.
I always say the fetch stop limit, right? If you don't want people to initialize more than, say, 5,000 MBOs in a set, that makes sense as your download rows, right? Because you're really actually initializing more than that. But and there are some improvements to the way that they do table downloads so that it doesn't keep more than 5,000 MBOs in memory and stuff like that. But still, like, the amount of data you're retrieving is probably more than what you should be doing. So I think 5,000 is a good default. We have some customers that have it at 100,000. I think that's really kind of pushing it, depending on what it is, right? A work order is very different than doing something like, I don't know, a domain, right? If you're downloading a bunch of domain values,
Yeah, person records is where I always jump. Like if I'm looking for a simple, straightforward record. So what's the fetch stop limit out of the box? Is it 2,000?
5,000. It is
It is
5,000.
5?
Yeah.
Okay, so setting this to 5,000, easy to be a Stephen Shull recommendation there.
A couple of other things from a user or administrative perspective. There's some logging changes, and so I'm going to talk about a couple of these. So I'll scroll down just all the way to the bottom. A couple of things that are in here now is there's this concept of a thread ID, and you don't always have correlation, right? So what'll happen before. Oh, I zoomed in too much. Sorry, I tried to make it a little bit easier to read, and I made it too big. Um, so you now have correlation IDs, right? And most of the time that's great. But there are times that threads get started that don't have a correlation ID, and then you're trying to group a bunch of log entries together. Now you can actually track this thread ID, and this thread ID will actually correspond, and so you can see all those transactions as they relate together. So that's always helpful. The other thing that they've done is if you've looked at the logs in 9.0 or 9.1, every JVM is typically called MX server. You can change it. Like if you have different server bundles, you can make it a MIF or all or whatever. But now they actually track the pod name. And so now when you ingest these logs into something like Elasticsearch or whatever, you can actually tell which pod it came from really easily. Most of the times, like when we do our log ingestion into Elastic, we tag the pod name already. So we have the ability to filter for pods.
Yeah, but if you're just downloading a file or pulling it with Postman or whatever, that's nice to have, kind of know where it came from. I think going back to the correlation ID too, I often recommend to clients that are using a lot of REST calls to turn off the feature because it stops logging REST calls and dumping so much to your logs. So I think getting the extra ID, especially when that CID is turned off, will be pretty huge.
And then I think the only other thing that we really wanted to cover is a couple of things on the mobile front. So we talked about the setup. I think the setup is really great. So just a couple more things on the mobile front, right? So obviously there's new applications in 9.2. So you have the ability to actually create locations and stuff like that. One of the things that I'm most excited about is the visual inspection piece. So there's always been an inspection app on iOS, but it was developed and managed by a different team inside of IBM, and it required licensing separate from Maximo. And so it was always kind of a pain point, right? I need to take a picture and run an NVI model. And they added the ability to do it from an inspection in some of the earlier releases. But being able to actually do it straight from the mobile app is fantastic.
So is this really integrating MVI into your manage workflow even more?
Yeah,
Like I'm out there doing an inspection, I take the picture, and it's like, yes, there's a crack in the concrete.
yeah. I think it's mobile has always kind of been trying to get geared towards its suite level, right? So there's an actual mobile. The navigator is actually served by a core Mass core feature, but it's really kind of always been heavily managed focused up until now. This is really kind of that first integration with another part of the suite. And to me, it's a very logical point where again, you're out there, you're performing work, and you're like, man, this transformer looks a little off. You can go run your MVI model against it, and I think it's just another fantastic expansion. It's
So
not
essentially, mobile's an edge device at that point,
yes, 100%.
for a moment in time at least.
A couple of other things that they've added that's not on here is the ability, like for us, a lot of our customers prefer seamless SAML logins, which means that as soon as you navigate to the home page, it'll redirect your identity provider, authenticate, and then you're off and running, which is great for customers. The problem that we have is when customers have trouble, like they have mobile times that are excessive or they have a specific flow that's broken, it makes it very difficult for us to support. We have to typically go into their lower environments, disable seamless login, try to configure it, hope that we have the same problem in the lower environment that we do in the production system. We'll actually be able to log in using our other identity provider, which is fantastic. Um, and then another thing that's not on the screen that I would love to kind of show is the concept of a dashboard, right? One of the challenges was there's so many applications for mobile that you have to log into My Schedule to get your work orders. You go to the inspections to get your inspections. You go to the SRs to get your SRs. You can actually go from that dashboard and see, hey, I have 10 work orders that I need to go work, or hey, I have 15 inspections that I need to do. It just kind of brings all those applications together in a more unified way.
Is that almost identical then to like an operational dashboard? I'm assuming it's the same framework, or
Not the same framework, but it's the same kind of concept, right? An operational dashboard shows you your work queue. You know what you need to do. Same concept, different framework based on how they have to operate for mobile, and it is configurable, so you can add your own as you add additional work queues and stuff like that.
so we're not seeing our dashboards in mobile yet.
You'll see that a lot, like the role-based applications. They're either going to be geared towards mobile or not. Like there's the new work order role-based app, which is different than the Tech Mobile app. And the framework, like from a configuration perspective, it's a very similar experience. But you can't just flip a flag and then the work order role-based app becomes a mobile app. They have very different challenges and problems that you're trying to solve. So some of the UI components will only work in one versus the other. But once you get comfortable with that framework, it kind of gives you that value for both.
I think if we look back into the history of Maximo, isn't that how every place, I think that's what it was called, worked? It was kind of like, here's your mobile app, here's your standard app, same framework, different experience.
All right. Any closing thoughts that you want to add? Items that I didn't have in my list. Unfortunately, this is still a subset of the list. There's just a lot of new stuff in 9.2, and we may do a follow-up session too to cover it, maybe after the release and go more in depth in the demo side of things. And then kind of our tips and tricks for the week is we're just going to highlight our more community. So our more community is where we want our customers to be able to go to ask questions, right? There are a lot of times something's not exactly a support issue, but best practice. How do I do X? Or I want to start taking advantage of this new feature. What are some of the gotchas that I should be aware of? If I'm looking for, let's say I'm a new person in the Maximo community and I want to know where do I go for a conference, right? What's some conferences that are near me that could be potentially good? Like obviously we have Maximo World coming up. It's a fantastic conference. I'm a big fan personally of the Maximo Utility Working Group. I think the Maximo Utility Working Group is a great conference for somebody to go to. Even if you're not a utility, don't get fooled by the name. It's not restricted to just utilities, but definitely a lot of resources. Some of the conferences are going to be Maximo adjacent. So like this Esri conference as an example, if you're using Spatial, you're almost guaranteed to be using Esri as kind of your backend system. A lot of good useful information there. If you're not using Spatial or you're not using any ArcGIS system, then obviously won't be as relevant to you. But definitely check out ask questions. We love to try to help provide feedback as much as possible. I'm on here a lot, maybe a little bit more than I should be, but
I try to answer questions on here, and anytime I read something that's like, oh, I can actually do that, you've already responded. It could be out there for like 15 minutes. I feel like you've already responded. It's crazy.
All right. Phil, I really appreciate you taking the time. I hope you guys all find this informative.
Happy to be here.
Feel free to reach out to us and ask any questions.